Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into today's webinar. My name is Allison Kim, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator here at Latera Microsystems. Before we begin, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items. Today's session will be recorded, and afterwards you will receive a copy of the recording to reference back to and/or share with colleagues. The webinar will run for 30 minutes with time at the end for Q&A. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to submit them into the chat panel, and we will try to answer them all during the session. But if time does run out, then we will follow up with you personally afterwards. With that said, I would like to introduce everyone to our presenter, Senior Product Manager Theo Lister, who today will talk about how you can safely reuse and revise DMS documents with the help from Clause Companion. Theo, with that said, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you for that, Allison. And as I'm sure you're aware from Allison, you tripped over your tongue saying this title. It is a little bit long, sorry about that. But I do want to touch on each and every component of this title. So there's four rough areas, but the first one I want to focus on is that safely element, because there are plenty of existing challenges with the way that template solutions, the way that clause solutions exist in the market today, and the type of reception that they've been having from the user base. So before I get into that, I want to show you how this ties into the themes that we've been having as a company. So throughout this year, there have been three core focuses for this company in terms of our product development, but also in terms of what we want to achieve as a business and the types of research and the types of questions that we've been asking towards the market. Now, the first one is just the concept of how we can continually improve and increase the stability of our products. That is pretty much a given, and I hope you'd assume that all of your vendors have a focus on this as well. The second part of this is a platform decision. So as we grow as a company and as our user base becomes more mature in their understanding of legal technology and what the expectations of the market are, how we can make sure that the platforms that we offer aren't just single point solutions. They are building towards a higher cohesive vision, but also they're up to date with the latest user interface design and the types of features that people expect to see because they've been trained in their personal lives and the new technologies that you see coming out. But what we're talking about today really fits into this third theme, and this is how can we take this conversation about legal technology and the products that we provide and take them one level higher. So how can we elevate the conversation and take existing workflows and open them up in new ways, not just to have technology for the sake of technology, but to really dig into the things that people are doing, the needs that still haven't been solved by the solutions and the tools out there, and move one step further towards cutting down some of this unnecessary burdensome time delays, but also mitigating risk. So the one thing I wanted to touch on when we have this title of how to safely reuse and revise documents is what the challenges are today. And these challenges tie very closely into the reason we actually decided to make Clause Companion as a product last year, just to begin with. But a lot of this discussion started with the concept of having forms from a practice group level. And this is something that firms still struggle with. And it's something that we run into a lot as one of our products is all about helping people create these templates and create these forms. And a lot of in-depth discussion happens as a part of that implementation. So this is something that isn't going to be very new to people who are experienced in this scene. It's been talked about for years, maybe even decades. But there is still these levels of problems with working out the ultimate responsibility for who maintains standard forms and who owns the best practices in their use. There's still issues surrounding getting attorneys to review forms on a perpetual basis, so that it isn't just something that's a static piece of information. It updates and evolves over time as the regulatory framework or new case decisions are made and they're updated. So this concept is setting up a system there's still this risk of letting it get out of date because of a lack of action on behalf of ultimately the people who benefit the most by having that good forms database. It's incredibly simple, but it's still something that remains a challenge. And this is something we have systems in place to resolve, but as we saw with traditional document creation, there is still a habitual, I'd say, bucking of the system that's been established by the actual end users, the actual attorneys who are drafting. And that ties into a very core need of why Clause Companion came about, because that individualistic approach still happens. And then there's template management and document management. It's a huge part of the practice of law, but the starting point for people who are consuming this information still seems to revolve a lot around whether we should use templates at all, whether it makes sense to begin with. And this leads to hours being wasted with the duping and revising of documents that have already gone corrupt or already require to go in there and change the facts of a case or a matter around so that they can fit the procedures that you need to put in place for a new client or a separate matter. It's these documents that we're talking about here, they are the bread and butter of a law firm. And it's difficult to see that there's a lot of, at the ground level, hesitance to put into place systems and controls to actually make sure that these are the best they can be. So templating itself, I will whiz through some of the main challenges that happen in this space. And it's economies of scale, because some companies have a limited number of templates. They can use them repeatedly. They're quite scalable because there's only a few of them. In law firms, there's so much breadth as well as depth of focus. There's so much expertise spread across a wide area that there's also this unpredictability about what people will be called on to draft at any given time. It really depends upon which potential client walks through the door and what their particular needs are. It's very difficult to standardize that. The billable hour, I don't want to talk too much about this. People talk about the billable hour all the time, and it's a good reason, but it gets a bit of a strained conversation at times. The efficiency by templating solutions, people might think it works to their disadvantage, but the other item is the productivity. You're measured by how much you can bill. There's a counter argument that you can bill more if you're not writing up all your time. But the other side of this is expertise. So the difference between having something with substance and then having something with the correct and optimal language, there's a disconnect there. So you do really need a combination of the person with the legal experience, but the person with the experience drafting and producing a document or a template that will stand up to the test of time. And that is our conversations that happen. And there are partnerships and firms which make sure that that's pushed forward, but it can be difficult connecting those different dots, especially with a global firm with so many different goals to aim at. And fragmentation of partner standards in particular, because at the end of the day, unless you're a partner yourself, you're at the whims of what the partners need. And if that is, I know there's a template solution out there, but I've used this form myself. I've used this document for years and years, never failed me yet. That's what their juniors and their associates are going to go to as well. And it is routine for associates to be asked to use one precedent contract for a particular deal for a particular partner, and asked to use a different contract, the same deal for another partner. And that type of attitude, it's commonplace, and it's there for a reason, but it doesn't help when it comes to successfully having initiatives for getting templating solutions out there. And it just creates a resistant audience. And it's something that we've seen, and it's something that we've been trying to move towards as it comes to some of the newer trends we're seeing, feeding into this and putting solutions out there that move towards and enhance the prospects of template initiatives so that things are changed, so that something can change. And these are some of the areas that we're seeing here. Document assembly, rather than just simple templates, this is increasingly noticeable. Oh, I just mentioned this, billable work. give something to a client, they'll take out their red pen and start playing havoc with it. This is happening more and more as clients feel more free to have this level of back and forth, this level of disagreement about what constitutes an appropriate bill. There's also individual responsibility, and this really ties into this piece. So previously, there was sort of a company standard. You would use the technologies that are provided to you by the firm, and if you don't have something for a particular need, you go back to basics. So the Microsoft Word, that would be using something previously stored in the DMS, pulling it out, and then opening it up and fiddling around with it until the facts of the matter fit what you're trying to achieve. And that is very much what happens in this reuse and revise of DMS documents. So for one, lawyers pride themselves on what they call deal recall, or there might be different names for it, but the ability to have a new matter come in, have a new client need, and immediately recall the last time you drafted something that is similar enough that you can reuse some of that content and cut down on the amount of time it takes you to get to that first draft. However, for individuals, we're seeing that people are having this opportunity to excel in their roles. So juniors, particularly junior associates, they now have this emphasis on taking responsibility for their own drafting efficiency. And even at full service firms, you see individual lawyers tending to specialize and perform repetitive drafting work, which again would be well suited to templates or clause libraries. And some of them are becoming immersed in technology and buying software for themselves, or putting their own processes in place, or maintaining their own clause libraries, sharing that information with others. And that's absolutely admirable. But again, that can go too far, and it can cause another type of fragmentation, which is people with all sorts of different approaches, all very well-meaning, but you end up with this sea of information which is spread beyond the ability of the firm to control. And we created Clause Companion, which is one of our fastest growing products, to directly respond to this level of individual focus on managing work product from lawyers. And this storage of information, this proliferation, we were seeing all sorts of strange ways that people were using the systems that were already in place in their firm to store this information. So storing something in a DMS, saving it and revising it, that's one, that's incredibly common. But there are all sorts of other places. People are saving Word documents on their desktop, or trying to hide it in the recycle bin. Or we've even heard of people using the deleted items folder within Microsoft Outlook to store preferred language. And when the IT team would come and do regular sweeps or regularly throw out the information in the recycle bin, you get lots of frustrated help desk calls because all of that drafting language that people were relying on has disappeared, because obviously if it's in the recycle bin, at some point it might go away. However, one of the other items here is if there's the opportunity to rethink the role of economies of scale. And I won't touch on this as much, but there are certainly organizations out there, whether it's standards organizations like the Document Excellence Group, or whether it's trade associations that are either creating standards around the styles that we should be using in documents, or creating standards in the templates that you can acquire for them. And maybe in the future, there will be a real push towards consolidation of those services. So there can be agreement across different levels that these are the particular templates that should be used. And then we can move a little bit closer towards having some inter-firm agreement on these items. So what I will show you now is, in practice, what somebody might do to try and recall something from their document management system, and the steps that they would need to take in order to refit it to accurately fit the facts of the matter at hand. So let me open something up, and surprise, surprise, I'm not going to dig into the DMS, because finding something that fits the matter at hand, it can take a pretty long time. But it is worth being said that this information could be stored all over the place. So not necessarily just in the document management system. So I do, of course, have all of my Litera desktop products at hand here, but that's not always going to be the case. So if I scroll through this document, there's already multiple areas jumping out that would need to be changed. So a company name, that would need to go. Particular state, that might need to go. And I'm giving myself placeholders here, but honestly, this might be something that somebody's going through time and time again and refitting out as they see the need. So then I might do Control S and type in the dollar symbol and make sure I'm finding all of these areas where there's dollar values. But I'm not going to find everything because maybe I'll have pounds or euros in there. There can be a real mixture of content. And that's where, yes, this work needs to be done. If somebody isn't going to go towards a template and use that, they are going to rely upon previously drafted work product, then there needs to be some method of finding this information and facilitating it. So that is what we're working on at the moment. And let me reverse all those changes I just made. So Clause Companion as a product. So it exists here. And quite normally, I would have my three areas of content. There's the personal information, which is just for myself, that's my clauses. Then there's the information provided to me by the firm. So this might be approved definitions or information and provisions that are particular to my practice group that might have been curated with the assistance of a department head or a senior paralegal who's experienced in all this language that I should be using, and that's updated regularly. And then there's the inter-practice area sharing. So when I find myself in a situation with a document like this, of course, I will be referencing my clause library if there's new provisions that I need to bring into the document itself. I need to draft and I need to find a new restatement clause or something like that. I can always pull from here, but what we've been seeing, and actually one of the first questions that people started asking when we rolled out Clause Companion to them and we started seeing a lot of use from lawyers was, I know I can use this to save clauses, but can I use this to save an entire document? And the answer then, or the answer now and then was yes. Previously it was yes, but why? What is the issue there? Why is there this need to save whole documents if there are templating solutions or if there are DMS documents there that you can use and revise? So the response to that was effectively this whole process, the fact that you need to go through and find this information and then revise it so that it can be applicable in a future matter. So this new feature, and this will be part of our end of year release. So this is still in development, but there are things here we want to show to people. And if there's feedback available, we want to know what it is and make sure that we can incorporate that so we're getting the best experience for everybody. But now if I'm saving something off to my clause library, this would typically be, okay, I've found this content, it goes to the clause library, and then it's relatively static until the next time that I review it, or I can share it with somebody who might have more of a responsibility to review this information. Now, however, we've done something, so we've connected one of our engines that reads documents and then looks for not just the structure and the style, but the actual information that relates to usability from matter to matter. Scrolling through, we're picking up quite a lot of information. So there's potential dates, company names, and you can see these companies are repeated quite a lot. So there's multiple places I would have needed to find them. And then even currency amounts, names of people, addresses, states, phone numbers. So this is all information that would have to go because this is the kind of stuff that if I'm drafting for a client, I'm being relied upon for my legal expertise. But if I leave the wrong person's name in there, that's the kind of thing that anybody can pick up on. And actually, if I'm drafting something, it might be the thing that trips me up. It might be something that reduces confidence in me more than if I'm incorrectly, let's say, distributing the risk in a clause from buyer to seller. I have a few different options here. So I can just put a blank line in. I can put in a placeholder. So the bullets, or I call them blobs, the symbol that indicates that something else needs to be put in there. But I can also go a little bit further and put in a variable. And this is where the automation and the reusability becomes a large part of the clause library, because this is a way that lawyers can quite quickly find a way of making their content fresh every time they use it. So something like AHS, for example. So we've given it a default value. It is a company name. That's what we've detected it has at least. But as an individual, as somebody who's drafted this before, maybe I can go into a little bit more detail and I know a little bit more about the situation. So I can revise this and say, actually, this is the seller. And that variable name is updated so that when I choose to automate it, so I run this through the system, it takes all of those things it's identified and then it applies the tags. So in this case, it was the fact that I said one of these particular people is the seller. And then for the rest of them, I'm relying upon the defaults. So the currency amounts is picked up. Now that it's automated and it's here in my library, and the sharp-eyed amongst you will see that I apparently cannot spell the word test, which I'm sure we have a product for that somewhere in our suite. So now, assuming that I'm starting a new matter, rather than having to dupe and revise, having to open up my DMS and find something which fits the matter at hand, so I have this here. This is now a new document that I can get started with, but it also gives me the ability to fill in this information now so I can navigate to it. And something like this, the seller, you can see it's blanked out the particular name, but now I know that I can add in the particular name of the seller. So that's, I'm going to be completely unoriginal and give them a name that completely mismatches what it's meant to be, but hey ho. So now I can start filling in that information. And I can see wherever it was previously available, now it's matched out with something else. So the long and short of it is, with this, I'm now a little bit further away from that manual process and getting to grips with what I need to be producing a little bit faster. So jumping back to this, that was what it looks like, but it also fits into our strategy as a company. So I showed earlier those 3 themes that we're working towards. And one of them is this: how do we take this conversation? How do we take existing workflows one step higher? But every time we're creating new features, every time we're releasing new products, we're trying to see how they fit into the cohesive drafting lifecycle. So how does this exist effectively as an integration point for our other products? So now I'm creating new documents end to end. So I've gone straight from this precedent and clauses section here, and now I've started a new document. So I can be going through the styling, the proofreading, the repairing, that are a necessary part and parcel of drafting something new. Getting to the point where I'm comparing and sharing with my colleagues, and then making it available to clients so that I have this information ready to share with them. And then it's bridging this gap here. So it's taking something that's finished work product, taking all of the iterative improvements that happen along the way, and then jumping the gap and basically starting this drafting life cycle again, so that I'm not losing the knowledge that I've learned or the improvements that I've built into my work product as I go along. It's continually improving, and it means that documents that I'm providing are of the highest quality because they're always on that upwards path. So it's a little optimistic of me. Of course, in practice, you might not get all of those value benefits all at once, but it means we can weave together these different elements of Litera Desktop as a platform. It also means that we can have other products in our suite working in the language of this clause library. So why can't I proofread things that are saved in my clause library? Why can't I be automatically styling them if I find issues? And then closing that loop and bringing things forward. So the next steps here. So I've gone over quite a feature-rich product. We only have a limited amount of time, but let's try to do it quite quickly. If you want to know more about Clause Companion, we have a team who's always happy to talk about it. If you have Clause Companion already, and this is a little new to you because it hasn't been released yet and you want to know more, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to our team. And again, if you want to know more about what's coming from us, then we have more webinars. I'm assuming you found your way to this webinar. You know the standard way to find the rest of our webinars, but it's all there on our website. And now if you have any questions, please feel free, both barrels, happy to answer anything.
Great, thank you, Theo. Let's just take 15 seconds just to review what questions are coming in, and then we'll answer them shortly.
And that was applause in another meeting room, not for my presentation. I'm very sad to inform you.
We'll clap for you at the end, Theo. All right, so we have our first question. Are there any plans to build integration with iManage?
It's absolutely something that we're open to. And of course, iManage has a bit of a split. So they have the DMS product, but there's also the Raven search product, search/AI. It's something we're interested in, but we haven't yet basically proven the business case to the iManage team that this is an integration that they should extend. So on that front, if this is something you're interested in hearing about, please let us know. We can speak with the iManage team and build that support for this.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our second question. When saving clauses, is the style and/or numbering associated with the text part of the clause?
Maybe going a little beyond my, my expertise in terms of styling. So we have, I suppose, two splits in the terms of the way that this functionality works. If I'm saving off a clause, then we save it off, but in a very, let's say, neutral format. So we're trying not to take the styles that are associated with the text itself, because if I'm saving a clause from one document and then inserting in another, I don't want to be importing styles from document A to document B. That's generally bad practice, and it can cause a few areas of confusion. So in that, instead, we will jump into the document and see what existing style, is being used, and then match that. For this feature, so being able to save an entire document and then effectively opening it anew with a degree of automation, it will save that style and numbering, because otherwise we would just be stripping everything and giving it the normal style. And again, in both situations, we're trying to work with what the expected behavior would be and what would get the best look and feel for the document.
Awesome. And then I have another question that just came in. How does this integrate with Forte? It seems you're using this for entire documents, similar to what you would do with Forte.
Yeah, that's a good point. In terms of the integration, so we do have plans ultimately to merge the engines powering this. So having one engine, but powering both Forte and Clause Companion and this automation, and ultimately making it so that it's not you can have two products, but ultimately what's surfaced to the individual users is up to the firm's decision. And in terms of integrating further, it has its set piece in a lawyer's workflow. So I mentioned earlier that there's challenges around repeat use and formation of templating. Templates still have a place, and they can still be of a lot of use for a lawyer's toolkit. But this feature in particular is predicating itself upon the fact that this is a document that I've saved and I've created myself, and I trust almost implicitly. Whereas on the template side of things, there's a lot of knowledge being provided, but there's still, to properly service my client's needs, I need to check this and make sure I agree with this, because ultimately it's my name on the dotted line at the bottom that approves this content. So they'll probably find themselves moving a little closer together, but with those two splits in workflow, it's unlikely that we'll smush them into one singular workflow.
Okay, perfect. That is all the questions that we have for today. Thank you, Theo, for presenting. a round of applause. As a reminder, you can see, thank you. As a reminder, you can view all upcoming webinars as well as past archived ones on our website at litera.com/webinars. All right, thank you everyone for joining us and hope to see you at the next session.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye for now.